Yes, so this is class 13. We are going to continue with the discussion of helical gears today, and we'll see some of the formulae that are associated and some parameters that are described, particularly for a helical gear, and what difference it makes when it comes to the analysis of spur gears and helical gears. So that we'll discuss. Then we'll directly proceed to the problems where you will eventually find the differences in designing spur gears and helical gears. Yeah, so let me begin. So these things I discussed, I'll touch on them briefly. What are the things that we discussed in the previous class? So we understood that spur gear, there is a normal force acting along a line on the gear tooth. So it traverses from the dedendum to the addendum and then disengages. And by the time it disengages, there's one more tooth would have already come in contact and engaged with the next adjacent tooth in order to provide continuous transmission. Helical gears also, there is a continuing transmission, but the difference is rather than having just a line contact from top to bottom, it will have a sliding contact from one of the sides, maybe from left to right or right to left, depending on the direction of rotation. So it will start as a point and then traverse over the surface, not just from addendum to dedendum, but rather from one side of the face width to the other. Okay, so that is the action of a helical gear. There are some advantages in both these cases. Spur gears, as we know, the contact is only a line. We have a limited amount of friction, and that is why the efficiency of a spur gear is more. And also on the higher side, since it is purely line contact and the strength of the gear tooth is calculated based on the cantilever type of arrangement. So it can be said as it is going to create much more torque, or in other words, handle much more torque in any specific application when compared to a similar sized helical gear tooth, where a sliding contact is achieved. Okay, so strength wise, spur gear is more and helical gears are lesser. And that is why we saw a practical difference, especially in automobiles, where first gear or the high torque gear is usually a spur gear, and the rest of the gears where speed is of concern and the torque is of a lesser concern, we go for helical gears. Okay, so this is all the things that we discussed across. Coming to the efficiency part again, since spur gear is just point-to-point contact or line contact, we have the efficiency to be more, and the efficiency is less because in helical gear because of sliding contact. So we will have generated more heat in the same process of turning when compared to the spur gears. And this point, that is axial thrust, will generate more heat. Okay, this is our specific concern, and this concern tells us that you require some amount of lubrication or coolant in order to handle that heat. Okay, some amount of lubrication or coolant is required. So that we'll discuss when we go through the first problem and its procedure. Also, when coming to the line diagram or force diagram, I can say, of an helical gear and compared to the spur gear, we had just discussed a few points. We'll continue from that itself. Okay, before that, let me come across a definition. In a helical case, there is an angle called helix angle. So what is that helix angle? Defined as the angle between the axis of the shaft, in other words, on which the entire gear is rotating, and the center line of the tooth taken on a pitch plane. Center line of the tooth taken on a pitch plane. Okay, this is also important, taken on a pitch plane, because the tooth in itself is not straight. Okay, the tooth in itself is not straight. How can we say that? Because we understand that it is on a curvature. For example, look at this slide here. So this is kind of an edge of a paper on a base cylinder. Okay, so the tooth in itself is in a curved way. Of course, when you open it up, it will form a straight line, and that is what we use for analysis here. Okay, That is what we use for analysis. When you extrude it or open it up, for example, this edge of a paper which is forming a helix on a cylinder, when you open it up, it forms a straight line, maybe an oblique line. Similarly, all these tooths that you can see, okay, just a section is given. In this case, you see around 3 tooths over here. Okay, this portion, these 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, you know that this is only one small section that is getting discussed, but we know that there are teeth all around the entire gear. Now, on this one particular tooth, what is the force that is acting? So you have F or W, whichever nomenclature you use, as the normal force that is acting on the tooth. And if you resolve it, you will not get only two forces as in the case of spur gears. Spur gears, as we discussed in the previous class, let me again brief you on that. If there is a force, it is acting on a line and that line remains constant. For example, if this is a spur gear, that line remains constant, and on that line you have only one normal force, normal to the surface of the tooth. Okay, and that one force line can be divided into two components or resolved in two components. One is called tangential, called Ft, okay, which is giving rise to the bending stresses, and Fr, which we usually neglect. Why we neglect? We have seen that using the Lewis equation, even if you include that Fr force, it is only going to make the tooth stronger and make the bending stress lesser than what it is actually is. So Fr is kind of a neglecting Fr makes the equation more conservative. So these are the only two forces that we have on a spur gear. When it comes to helical, since the tooth is already at an angle with respect to the axis, okay, that axis angle is called as a helix angle. So very important, what is a helix angle? Angle between the axis of the shaft and the center line of the tooth taken on a pitch plane. And this helix angle, different textbooks and different data handbooks have different nomenclature. Okay, some of the data handbook, I think our data handbooks uses beta. Okay, beta is the angle. Okay, some of them, especially in the case of figures, they may use the angle psi. Okay, but make sure you are referring to the correct angle here. The helix angle beta, that is the angle made by the tooth, or I can say the center line of the tooth taken on a pitch plane with the axis of the entire gear, okay, or the rotation of the gear system. Now, coming back to our discussion, how many components that you can see here? See, this is normal to the tooth is already inclined at some angle. So that means the entire vector, if you draw with respect to the axis, taken the rotation of the gear as one plane, then what you can see is you can resolve this into three different forces. One is Ft, very similar to what you have in spur gear. Then Fr, yes, of course, that is also there, but that component is quite small when compared to Ft itself. Okay, and that is obvious. But there is one more additional component called Fa, or also called Wa. What is this? This is nothing but axial force. This is an axial force. This was absent in the spur gear. This axial force component was not at all necessary. So you have a gear where Ft is acting, Fr is neglected, fine. So you have to concentrate only on Ft. Now, because this Fa has come, now this is going to influence the working of the system. Not only the gear or the gear tooth itself, the working of the system. So Ft, what it will do, it will create a bending stress at the root of the gear tooth. Each and individual gear tooth, it is going to take a bending stress. And you can treat this gear tooth as a cantilever, as we had seen in the derivation of the Lewis equation. Now, Fr is a component that exists, but anyway, even if you include that, that is only going to make the tooth more stronger. It is not going to render the tooth weaker. So we will neglect that here also. Fr component we are going to neglect. But at the same time, Wa is going to put some stresses on this tooth. Not only on the tooth, on the entire gear itself. So this gear may be having 20, 30 teeth, whatever it is, the combination. The entire cylinder is subjected to an axial force, Fa. So what happens? The entire gear is kind of pushed. Okay, the gear is pushed towards one side. For example, let me just give example here. Let me draw a small shaft here, and then you have a helical gears in this fashion. Okay, slanted. So what happens when the gear rotates? You have Ft. Ft is acting like this. That component we have proven, and there is a component called Fr. So this is Ft. Fa. Okay, Fr is perpendicular to the plane of which I am drawing. So Fa is trying to push the gear towards one side, trying to push the gear itself on the shaft, or if the gear is directly fastened or welded to the shaft itself is trying to be pushed by this force Fa. Then how to counteract that force? Remember, this force was absent in the spur gear system. So how to counteract that force? You have to use some specific kind of bearings which will counteract that force or provide the necessary lubrication and the rotation that is necessary for this shaft. So how to do that? Okay, in simple spur gears, let me draw a small spur gear here. Okay, the tooth are straight, simple spur gears, only Ft was there, and so you would have required only a certain type of roller or ball bearings. Okay, certain type of roller or ball bearings. These are usually called radial ball bearings. Okay, radially connected ball bearings, which takes the force in the lateral directions only. Okay, in the lateral directions only. There is nothing to be worried of in the axial direction. Whereas this system, or you can say the entire gear set, since it has a tendency to be pushed whether to the left or to the right or in any way where Fa is acting, you will have to give something extra to it. So either it can be a combination of, okay, a combination of say a roller bearing on this way and then a roller bearing which will take care of the axial force, or there is one more kind. Anyway, this we'll be discussing when we go through the chapter of roller bearings. You have tapered roller bearings. So what does this do? These type of bearings take hold of two forces. One is axial force and radial force. Okay, axial force, radial force. Radial force also can be called as the tangential force with respect to the bearing. Okay, with respect to the bearing. So these two forces are taken care of by certain bearings. Either you can have two different types of bearings, one to take care of Ft and one to take care of Fa, or Ft and Fa together can be taken care using tapered roller bearings. To be more specific here, say the rolling elements are spheres, spherical balls are used in most of the bearings that we use around, most widely used. Some of them have cylindrical roller bearings. Okay, so all those bearings usually take care of only Ft, okay, tangential force, or even Fr. But these tapered roller bearings are like this. Okay, they are cones. So you have two components to it. One is Fa and one is Ft. Okay, so that is why the tapered roller bearings are used in order to control the rotation or torque transmission in a helical gearing system. Okay, so this was about what are the complexities involved in designing a system with helical gears. Now let us come to the nomenclature, what we can study from the forces and the lengths and the pitches, etc. Okay, so okay, I think I can start from this slide itself. What we can do is this entire gear system with whatever gear tooth are there. Okay, let us say that you can just unwrap it. Okay, it was initially like this. Now what you do is unwrap it. You unwrap it, so it will form a continuous split. Okay, it is like you are removing the top section with all the gear tooth and lying it flat on a cylinder or lying and flat on a surface. So the outer circumference, you are opening it up flattening it out and laying it on a surface. How does it look like? So this is the figure B that you can see over here. Okay, so it looks like this, flat. So let us see what we can understand from this. Now, as you see from the top, each and every gear tooth is inclined or slant. Okay, and there is a specific angle which we call as helix angle. So in this figure, this helix angle is called as psi. Okay, let me mark it here. Helix angle. Okay. Now, as you can see, this helix angle exists with respect to what? With respect to the axis of the rotation. So the gear kind of rotates over here. Okay, the entire gear system rotates over here, rotates around this axis. So this is the axis of rotation that we are talking about. And with respect to the axis, you have a helical gear. Each and every gear tooth makes an angle psi or beta with respect to its axis. Now, when you measure along that angle psi, okay, along that angle psi, if you want to measure, you will always measure like this, right? Perpendicular to that particular angle. When you measure like this, you will get a particular pitch. What is a pitch? Pitch is the difference or the distance between any two similar objects. In this case, it is the distance between any two particular lines where we are interested on. Okay, so this circular pitch, which we call, let me give what is this Pn and Pt here. Pn is called as normal circular pitch. Pn is called as normal circular pitch. Okay, distance between any two adjacent items along the surface. So normal circular pitch. Why it is called normal? Now remember, when you had something of this nature in spur gears, suppose say you unwrapped a spur gear, how it would look like? I'll just draw it here just for comparison. Okay, a spur gear would look like this. And you had only one item called circular pitch, which we called as PC or simply P, because only one was there. Now you have to define two items here. One is called normal circular pitch, and this PT, write it here, PT is called transverse circular pitch. Okay, transverse circular pitch. What is the difference? See, Pn is measured normal to the force acting. How is the force acting? We know the normal force is acting like this, in the direction like this, directly to the tooth F. Okay, this is the force that is acting. So normal to that, if you have a pitch, we call it the normal circular pitch, and PT is a transverse circular pitch where the face width or the surface of the gear or the plane which is perpendicular to the axis is taken as reference. So this PT is different from what is Pn. Okay. In addition to that, you have two more things. One is called as the normal pressure angle. To understand what is normal pressure angle, you will have to cut a section. So from this you cut a section like this, section BB, which is shown over here, section BB, that same cutout is shown over here. So when you cut through this section, the angle that you are getting for this particular tooth is called as phi n, which we call as normal pressure angle. This is called as a normal pressure angle, and correspondingly, if you cut a section AA that is perpendicular to the axis of rotation or the surface of rotation itself, if you want to consider, you will also get a profile like this, but the profiles will be different. They may look very similar. For example, section AA and section BB looks very similar, but of course the angle will be different because they are two different planes cut at a difference of a helix angle. So here you will get phi t, which we call as transverse pressure angle. Okay, transverse pressure angle, that is called phi t. Okay, there is one more component I would like to describe here, maybe not shown in the slide. Okay, how these all are related. Okay, PT, if you want to write a relationship between PT and PN using the angle, helix angle that is defined, what makes a difference? This helix angle. Okay, this helix angle is all what makes a difference between all those planes. PT is equal to Pn by cos psi, or cos of the helix angle. Okay, and now you can understand, suppose say the helix angle becomes 0, what are we talking about? Of course there is no helical gear with helix angle 0, but say just in case helix angle becomes psi equal to 0, psi is equal to 0, then cos of 0 is 1. So Pt is equal to Pn. What we are actually talking about is when psi becomes 0, it is actually a spur gear. Okay, Pt will be equal to Pn. Fine. Okay. Then there is one more relationship that anyway trigonometrically we can understand. The derivations are not that important here for you. So we'll just go through the relationships. Cos psi is equal to tan of phi n by tan of phi t. Okay, you can make use of these relationships. They are also in your data handbooks. Okay, so this is for us to understand how the forces interact. Okay, so that we will maybe able to understand the equations in a better manner. So cos phi is also equal to tan phi n by tan phi t. Okay, if you deduce from the trigonometric structure of the entire gear. Okay, yeah. So let us move on to what are the forces that are getting transmitted. We have seen the angles now. With respect to these angles, how to resolve the forces we will see. So as explained, you have total force W or F. Okay, then with the suffix R you have the radial component. This acts into the tooth. Okay, I can say into the tooth. You can see the direction here also. It is acting into the tooth. Okay, so it's actually helping the tooth to be in place. Okay, reducing the overall bending stress on the tooth. Fine. So WT, tangential component, also called a transmitted load or torque. Okay, so of course Ft is not torque, but Ft translates into torque when applied at a certain radius. So tangential component also called transmitted load, and W is the axial component, and this word is important here, thrust load. This is also called thrust load, and the bearings which are used to handle this thrust load are called thrust bearings. Okay, they bear the load in the direction of the thrust. Okay, so generally in industries, they rather than saying axial, they say thrust. Okay, so thrust load is handled by thrust bearings, or some bearings which handle both tangential and thrust direction loads, which we understood by the example of tapered roller bearings. Okay, so these are the different components that we had seen. How they are related to each other? WR is equal to W sine phi n. Okay, this is one relation. Expression of it, you see what is the normal angle. If you draw an entire vector diagram here, phi n becomes the normal pressure angle taken with respect to the bottom plane, the base plane on which the forces are acting. So phi n is the quantity over here, as you can see. So with respect to that, WR is W sine of phi n. Then WT, tangential tooth load, has a different angle now, that is with respect to phi t and psi also. So with respect to all those things, you can write W cos phi n into cos psi, that is helix angle, and WA component is W cos phi n sin phi. So these are all the derived quantities. Okay, we'll directly use them in our relationships when we design the particular gear system. Further, if we want to write one in terms of the other, that is, if you want to write R in terms of T, you have WR is equal to WT tan of phi T. Of course, it's just a one more derivation from here to here, okay, derived from this earlier formula. And A and T, this is the relationship WT tan psi or tan of the helix angle, and W is equal to WT by cos phi n cos psi. Okay, so these are all the different relationships that you are going to use. Okay, so let us go on to one more very important concept here, something called formative number of teeth or virtual number of teeth. Very important concept to understand as long as helical gears are concerned. So what is this formative number of teeth or virtual number of teeth? Okay, we all know that the teeth are inclined at a certain angle, correct? What is that angle called? It was just now discussed. It was called as helix angle. Okay, so it is you can either write it here. This is also a helix angle psi, or this one also. Okay, this is also called, because both are adjacent, or you can say alternating angles over here. Okay, by trigonometry or by general geometry also you can understand that this psi is also equal to this psi or the helix angle itself. Now, since the load, the final load, that is when that one tooth is engaging with other tooth, the forces are always normal to the surface of the tooth. Forces are always normal to the surface of the tooth, and they are getting pushed by one onto the other. What is this formative number of teeth and what is its importance? See, any design with respect to helical gear is considered on the foundations of what is it on the spur gear. Remember that there is no separate set of, for example, for spur gears, we had the Lewis equation. So we don't have any other equation to describe the bending stresses or the form factor of a Lewis equation in any other way. There is no other scientist who described anything else. But what we can do is we can project this concept of a spur gear onto the helical gear. Now, how is that possible? Helical gears, we know that even if you draw here, just for comparison's sake, this is the axis. All the tooth are, that psi angle is 0, helix angle is 0, it is all straight or parallel to the axis of rotation. And here, this is F. Now, how to translate onto this? What we have done is, we have created that same projection over here. Okay, we have created same projection. If you cut a plane like this here, now you have just to recap, okay, your engineering graphics, sections of solids. If you cut a cylinder, what you are going to get? Okay, now we have cut this section NN. Okay, this is a section NN here. That cutout section is shown over here. So this NN is shown over here. If you cut through this plane, you are going to get an ellipse. Okay, that hashed portion is shown here. It's a helix. Sorry, it's an ellipse, not yeah, I just missed my word, sorry. It is ellipse. Now this ellipse, okay, can be described, okay, this ellipse can be described as part of a bigger circle. What is that circle now? Say, for example, you have taken one individual tooth and say that you are going to project that as a spur gear. What am I doing? I'm just taking this part, and this outer circle I'm going to project as a continuous circle as a spur gear would do. For a spur gear, even if you cut through the section here, it is the same as a diameter. you won't have to get a helix, you would always get a perfect circle here. Whereas here, in the case of a helix or a helical gear, you are going to get an ellipse. That is why what you have to do is you have to project this outer circle, or you can say virtual imaginary circle, in such a way that, okay, let us go through the definition. It produces an ellipse. The third point, you see, in the design of helical gears, an imaginary spur gear is considered in the plane NN with center at O dash and having a pitch circle radius R dash. Okay. So what we do, in order to project this spur gear concepts onto the helical gear, you cut out a section, produce an imaginary circle with a radius R dash with a center at O dash. So obviously this circle will be of larger diameter, definitely, as you can see in this picture. So this is of just an ellipse, which is the original one, directly cut out from the helical gear cross section. Cross section is normal to the tooth. Remember, cross section is normal to the tooth. Now that same cross section, what you want to do, you want to continue this and say that instead of having a helical gear tooth section, I have a imaginary spur gear system. Now, whatever forces are on these imaginary spur gears are exactly the forces which are going to be projected onto the helical gear tooth. Okay, so that is the importance of a formative number of teeth. That is importance of formative number of teeth. So let us go to,
Sir,
yeah.
can you explain once again, sir?
Okay. I'll draw it again here. Just an example of a spur gear. If you have a tooth here of a spur gear, just say this is a spur gear. Okay. Yeah, this is a helical gear. And if you cut out a section normal to the tooth face, what would you get? That section, say I'll name it as MM over here. That section MM would be a perfect circle. Okay, there is no change. This section MM would be a perfect circle as you cut out through this. Okay, and as we mentioned that all the teeth would be laid down flat straight. Okay, even if you open the profile, it would look like this. Okay, straight. Now for this you can easily apply Lewis equation. Correct, but here it is a bit difficult. Why? Because your teeth are inclined. So one teeth is like this, the other teeth is like this, okay, parallel to each other, all teeth are like this. So even if you cut out a section through this, normal to the tooth, you will get an ellipse. And for an ellipse, you cannot directly apply the Lewis equation, because Lewis equation tells us that all the forces have to be normal. Okay, the form factor is of utmost importance here. So what you need to do is, okay, let us apply the Lewis equation with a small difference. What is that difference? Instead of saying the diameter is only this much, say, let me say this is dh is the diameter. I will create one more diameter called ds, which is of greater diameter than dh itself. Okay, this is an ellipse that you cut, but I want a perfect circle. Why? Because if you cut out a spur gear, you will get a circle. Spur gear, if when you cut out, you will get a circle. That section MM is a perfect circle. Okay, so that is why this ds has to be found out. And how to find out the ds, or what is that imaginary circle radius or diameter? Okay, the center will slightly shift here. Okay, O dash. So here this will be the imaginary circle. How much that center shift, that will be based on the helix angle itself. So next equations we will discuss based on that. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, you said in all the forces that are acting on the helical gear will be the same as the forces acting on the spur gear. In the helical gear, there is an axial component of force as well. How is
Yes.
that being compensated on the imaginary spur gear? Like, because for spur gear there are only two components of forces.
Okay. As we told you, the compensation for this is actually on the shaft or the gearing system that we put. Okay. Hello.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir, yes.
Yeah. It is actually on the shaft that we put. We are mainly concentrating on FT because once you do this analysis, the prime importance that comes out to be is of the see, it will go back to the same Lewis equation where the bending stresses on the extreme ends are calculated. Same way, what we discussed in the earlier part. Even if FA is considered, just imagine, see, it has a large face width, okay, some considerable face width, even if FA is considered, okay. So FA is acting somewhat like this, somewhat like this. So, of course, I cannot show it properly over here. The direction may be somewhat in a different angle. But let us say that FA is acting somewhat like this. The bending forces on this will be much lesser, okay, than your FT part. Got it?
Yeah. Okay, sir. Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this what we are doing is spur gear now. Okay. We are creating a virtual spur gear, taking the same laws and applying the Lewis equation based on that. So it's virtual or also called formative. It is like we are forming it. It is actually not in existence. Okay. Let us go to the definition. I think some things will be clear there also. Formative number of teeth or virtual number of teeth. What does it mean? In a helical gear means a number of teeth that can be generated on an imaginary circle or cylinder whose radius is equal to the radius of curvature at the tip of the minor axis of an ellipse by taking a section in a plane normal to the tooth. Okay. So what happens here? Let me just go back. Say there are 30 teeth here initially. Say you have 30. Z is equal to 30. Now what has happened? Because of your imaginary circle, the circle has enlarged, right? So obviously this ZE imaginary will be greater than 30 because the radius has increased. And you are not changing the profile, you are not changing addendum, dedendum, anything. You are just saying that, okay, let me put that same tooth, whatever the form factor is, on an imaginary circle with a larger radius. Then what happens? The number of tooth will definitely increase on the imaginary circle, imaginary spur gear. Yes, so that is what it means. The number of teeth that can be generated on an imaginary cylinder whose radius is equal to the radius of curvature at the tip of the minor axis. That is what we have seen. Radius is the tip of the minor axis. By taking a section in the plane normal to the tooth. And how it is calculated? So Lewis equation can be applied. This is the advantage that we have. Since Lewis equation was described only for spur gearing system, okay, then the Lewis factor to be considered is based on the formative number of teeth. So this is the equation that is going to change everything. ZE or the virtual number of teeth will be equal to the actual number of teeth. This is actual. Let me put that in words here. This is actual. This is virtual. Virtual or imaginary is equal to actual by cos cube beta. Okay, this can be derived, but anyway, it's not a part of your portion here. But let us remember this, very important. Okay, ZE is equal to Z by cos cube beta. A number of equations can be framed alone based on this. Okay, because that is how the relationship occurs. So what happens is, even though there are say set number of seeds, say 30, finally your analysis will be based on what is ZE, not on what Z is. Okay. So for whatever calculations are there, you will go with ZE number rather than just the number Z. Okay. Anyway, this all information and notes will be supplied later. Okay, once we finish this particular part. So a little bit about directions again, just to recap and also to understand what are the forces on these gears. Resulting force Fn acting on the tooth can be resolved in three components: Ft, Fr and Fa. Yes, that is what we have discussed, and I think all those parts are covered. I need not cover that again. It was just a part of your note, so I just put it here. Okay. Direction of tangential component for driving gear is opposite to the direction of rotation, and direction of tangential component for driven gear is same as that of rotation. So tangential component forces depends on what is a driving gear and what is a driven gear. Okay, if you want to do analysis based on this, the tangential component or Ft which we are talking about, okay, direction of tangential component for driving gear is opposite to the direction of rotation. So this is something what even when solving design of shafts we have considered. Okay, when solving design of shafts we have considered this concept. Okay, where you have to take plus, minus, or which direction depending on driver or driven gear. Again, just continuation of this. The radial component on the pinion acts, that is radial Fr, acts on the pinion, acts toward the center of the pinion. Radial component of the gear acts toward the center of the gear. Again, with respect to the shaft, if you want to consider this. Okay, and this is Fa. How the forces are acting, the thrust component. So select the driving gear from the pair. Use right hand for right hand helix and left hand helix. Thumb will indicate the direction of thrust component. Okay, thumb will indicate for driving gear. Direction of thrust component for driven gear will be opposite to that of driving gear. So let me go back to the first initial figure. Let me compare that. Yeah, this thumb will be the direction of the driving gear. Okay, so this is the direction of thumb, indicates the direction of the axial thrust for driving gear, opposite to that for driven gear. Similarly here, if it is the right hand, then this is the direction of the thrust for driving gear, opposite to driven gear. You can just make a note. I'll just give you a minute. Okay, so I think let us go with the first problem. Just take it down. Just add a sentence here. Okay, I just think I missed it. Okay. Okay, so let us start discussing this. So it's a helical gate drive with pressure angle 20, transmits 44 kilowatts of power. So let me write down with the nomenclature. So power requirement is 44 kilowatts. Pressure angle is 20. So phi or alpha. Okay, let me put it as phi. 20. 6000 RPM of pinion. N is 6000 RPM. Helix angle beta is 20 degrees. See, helix angle with respect to your data handbook is given as beta. Speed ratio is 3:1. Gears are subjected to medium shock, 8 to 10 hours per day of service. Medium shock. Eight to 10 hours per day. So this gives rise to service factor. We'll check it out later. Material for pinion is C30 steel. So C30 steel, sigma D1 we will see, and material for gear is C45, again steel. So this is sigma D2. Okay, anything more? Yeah, the final sentence you have to add, students. Minimum number of teeth on pinion is 20. So that means the starting point is given to us. Z1 is 20. Minimum should be 20. Design the gear with respect to strength, dynamic load and wear load. So with respect to strength, that is using Lewis equation, dynamic load and wear load using dynamic factor, etc. That we have done for spur gears till now. The same values will, same methods will continue here. Okay, so let us check out the properties of C30 and C45 first. Again 12.7 table number. Since there is only one type of C30, I will use that. Okay, it is 220.6 megapascal. So as you mentioned, this is with respect to table 12.7, page 234, and sigma D2 is C45 steel, that is 233.4 megapascals. Okay, you can check it out. These two values we took it out from the table. Okay. What about the service factor?
1.5.
1.5, yeah. Yes. Let me just hold on. Yeah. So it is 1.5. Medium shock 8 to 10 hours per day is 1.5. So this is with respect to table 12.8, page 235. So service factor is also taken out. Okay. Now I is equal to, we know that this is starting point, you can use that. I is equal to 3:1. So Z2 is equal to I times Z1. Okay, we know that to be 60 now, because Z1 is 20, Z2 will be 60. Okay, fine. Now coming to the virtual number of teeth, what you have to do. So we have the equation ZE1 is equal to Z by cos cube beta. Okay, z1 by cos cube beta. Beta is 20 degrees here. Okay, z1 by cos cube beta. So 20 by cos cube of 20 degrees. When you do this type of calculations, please be careful what mode you are running the calculator on. If it is in degree mode, then it is fine. If it is in radians mode, you may get a wrong or a different answer. So cos 20, when you enter, the 20 should be taken by our calculator in a degree mode. 20 by cos cube 20.
24.1.
24.1, yes, correct. And this virtual number of teeth need not be a whole number. Okay, this need not be a whole number. You can take the calculations as it is, because anyway it is going to be a imaginary number. So you don't have to round it off to any value. Similarly, ZE2 will be equal to Z2 by cos cube beta, so which is 60 by cos cube 20, and just 3 times more because it is I times Z1, so it comes out to be 72.3. Multiplying this ZE1 value by 3, that's it. Okay. Yes. So the involute angle is 20. So accordingly, your y1 equation will be 0.154 minus 0.912 by ZE1. What is the difference you can see? Instead of Z1 or simply Z, we have put ZE. This is the major difference here. Okay. Calculate with the virtual number of teeth that has been calculated. Then y2 will be again 0.154 minus 0.912 by ZE2. Okay. So y1 is
0.116.
yes, good. And this one is y2 is
0.141.
1414. Yes, good. So sigma d1 and sigma d2 is ready. Now it's time to find y1 and y2 are also ready. It's time to find out which is the weaker number. Okay, let me move on to the next slide. So here sigma d1 y1, the product will be, okay, and sigma d2 y2 will compare. Sigma d1 y1, that is 24.1 into 0.1162 should give you 25.63, and d2 y2 should be 33. Should be 33. Okay, then obviously this is lesser, this is more. Okay, so pinion is weaker. Therefore, design for strength is based on pinion. Okay. Now what about the formulae that what you have to use? See, the design data handbook has already given you the adjusted formulae for helical gears. So we will use that. We know the major part is the virtual number of teeth and also the module. Okay. Okay. One small factor to consider here is there are two different kinds of module here. Okay. Because there are two different types of pitches here. So that gives rise to two different kinds of module. So one is called as, okay, simply the module, and one is called normal module. Okay, normal module, and that is called MN. m suffix n will be equal to m cos beta. You can keep your books open, data and books. So it is according to 12.19 C. Okay, mn is equal to m cos beta. So this normal module, or that module that is measured with respect to the normal circular pitch, is taken into consideration. Okay, so the normal module is of importance over here. So accordingly all the equations will change. We'll come to that, all the things. First let us find out which is the equation to be used. Lewis equation for beam strength with respect to helical gears. Okay, so since d this is given, okay, let me write the equation first, then we'll explain. Oh, sorry, maybe I missed it. To mt Cw cos beta by sigma d Cv k capital Y Z. Okay, and this is root 1 by 3 according to 12.24 B. This is in page 214. Okay, Lewis equation for beam strength of the tooth. Okay, what are the components? Most of the components are same. For example, mt is the torque, sigma d is the material property, Cv is the velocity factor, k is the ratio b by m, y is pi into y, and z is the actual number of teeth that is to be considered. Okay, so what are those new components? We will just look into that. Okay, let me write adjusted equation now. Adjusted means you cube on both the sides, you will get mn cube into Cv. Why we took out Cv? Why not other things? It is very similar to what we had done for spur gears. Sigma d into k into y into z. Okay, coming back to our explanation, why Cv we took out. See, Cv is one which is dependent on velocity. Velocity is dependent on what the diameter is. So in this problem, Z is known, but diameter is unknown. Okay, remember, because dia is unknown. Same procedure we followed even for spur gears. When diameter was unknown, we went with m cube Cv, or in this case mn cube Cv. Okay, when diameter is known but number of teeth is unknown, we go with m square y. That's the only difference with all the problems. Okay, you have to identify the correct type and then proceed. Okay, so let us find out each individual components which we can substitute here. I just do it the side here. So mt will be equal to the same old equation, 9.55 10 power 6 PCS by n, and n is here in RPM, so n1. So it was 44 kilowatts, so 44 into 1.5 by 6000. It should give you 1.05 into 10 raised to 5 Newton mm. Just check it from your side also. If there is any error, we'll correct it here itself. 1.05 into 10 power 5 Newton mm. Okay. Sigma d is known, and with, since you are designing with respect to pinion, I can safely say that 1 can come here, y1, z1. Okay. So sigma d1 we already know. Y1 is anyway pi into y, so that is ready with us. Z1 is also known. what value to use for K? What value to use for K? Okay, we know that K is equal to B by M. Okay, let us go to that part. B by M N, that should be more proper because we are dealing with normal model here. Okay, for this, which value to use? Let us go to equation 12.23 F, page number 213. The range that is given there is B should be 12.5 times Mn to 20 mm. So what change we find here with respect to spur gear? Spur gear was usually from 7.5 to 12.5 and we took an average value of 10. But here the K value falls between 12.5 and 20. Okay, 12.5 and 20. So what we'll do is we'll safely say take K is equal to 15. Again an average value, not very average, but yeah, good for us to substitute. If everything else fails in the designing part, then we can come back and adjust this K value. Okay, so let us right now keep it at 15. So sigma d is done, K is done, y we can calculate, z1 is directly given, mt we calculated. What is cos beta? Cos of the helix angle, which is direct substitution again. You can see a new component here called CW. What is that CW? That was something that was totally absent in the case of spur gears. Okay, what is that CW? We know that the gears, the helical gears are both touching, or you can say impact type of contact, and also you have sliding contact. Okay, it is not just line contact, it is also sliding contact. One surface kind of rolls over the other surface. So the CW is something to do with the wear. W means it calls into account the wearing. So for that you have to give it some value over there. Okay, wear and lubrication factor it is called. So let us go to table 12.21. Okay, let us go to table 12.21. There you have three different values. You can choose any one of them, but what we'll do is we'll go with the say that okay, we have properly lubricated it. The first one is for enclosed gears continuously lubricated with oil of the proper viscosity and character. That is the nature of lubrication. So for this we'll take CW as 1.15. It's not mentioned in the problem, so we are free to choose. Okay, so we can directly take CW as 1.15. So this forms a major factor here, what kind of lubrication you provide. You see what happens if the lubrication is not proper. For scant lubrication it becomes 1.25, and for indifferent lubrication, that is you do lubrication once, leave it for some months or a few years, then lubricate whenever you get time. So that is indifferent lubrication, that is 1.35. okay, 1.35 is a CW. So this value goes on increasing. That means Mn value needs to increase with all other values remaining the same. So lubrication and wear go hand in hand. You require a lubrication factor because of the sliding contact that is prevalent in helical gears. So let us take this value now. So 2 into 1.05 10 power 5. CW is 1.15 into cos of 20 degrees. Sigma D, it was 220.6 for pinion. K is 15. Y1, capital Y1 is pi into Y. It is 0.1162. Okay, this is capital Y1, and Z1 is 20. Okay, so what is the Mn cube Cv which is required?
$7.81.
7.81. Okay, can I have one more value? One more confirmation?
9.39.
Yes, yes, yes. That even I'm getting that value. Okay, 9.397. Okay. So just check your values, maybe a slight mistake here and there. So yeah, 9.397. Others also can confirm.
So that Z is Z1 or ZE?
That is Z1 directly, direct number of teeth. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, since Mn is already done, Mn cube Cv, now we have to find out which suits well to this 9.397. So the outside you can see, okay, M if you give 2, Cv is always less than 1. So if you give 2, 2 cube is 8. 8 into something less than 1 will never give you 9 or more than 9. So we'll start with 3. We'll see 27. 3 cube is 27. If you take Mn as 3 mm, we will see whether it will fit. Okay, and we'll try to optimize it. I'll go to the next slide now. So here the first column for iteration is Mn, again taken in mm, the module, the normal module. D, the diameter, once you set the module, is Mn Z1 by cos beta. Okay. How it was with when it was a spur gear? It was simply D is equal to M into Z. Now this cos beta factor has come because of the helix angle. Now this particular relationship you can find, give that number. Yeah, it's a rearrangement of 12.19 only. Okay, you can refer to 12.19c. Okay, that same equation rearranged will give you D is equal to Mn Z by cos beta. Okay, let us continue. This is D. Then what is V? V is equal to pi D N1 by 60,000. Again, you will require this in meters per second. That is why. And then depending on what meters per second you get, you calculate what is CV, and then finally it is M cube CV, and compare what you want with the required value. So let us start with 3. Why I started with 3? I just gave you the explanation, because 2 will never satisfy it. We know from even before calculation. Okay, so let us start with 3 and try to optimize which value you will obtain. So if you say 3, then 3 this is 3 into Z1, which is 20, divided by cos of 20 degrees. What will you get? D as
63.85.
yes, 63.85. This value is also in mm. Yeah. Then if that is the case, then what will be the linear velocity at the circumference? V pi D N1 by 60,000.
200.6.
200.
20.06.
Yeah. I think you missed out 10. Yeah, 20.06.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. If that is the case, then we will now refer to the table. Separate tables are available for velocity factors. Remember, you cannot use the same velocity factor tables as you use for spur gears. Spur gear set is different, helical gear set is different. So here the series of equations start from 12.25. Okay, from A to E. Okay, from 12.25, page number 214. So don't confuse and in a hurry don't take spur gear values. Okay, spur gears have a different velocity factors consideration than from helical gears or any other gears. So CV factor here, and it is 20. So what you can say, which one you can use? 20. There are actually two competing things here. C and D both are coming close. Okay, V greater than 20. I think we can use D here because the velocity is high. Yeah, we can use D. 12.25 D, 5.55 by 5.55 plus root of V. Yeah.
0.553.
Correct. So I'll write the equation here. 5.55 by 5.55 plus root of V. Okay, this is 12.25 D. So as rightly pointed out, it is 0.553. Okay. If we use this, then finally mn cube CV, that is 3 cube, which is 27 multiplied by 0.553.
14.93.
Yes, 14.93 or 94. Okay, I'm getting, I think I've taken the entire calculator value. So, okay, fine. This is of no problem. 14.9 you're getting. Now, this is already overtaking what we require, right? 9.37. So, let us go to one more value, whether it is possible. Say 2 is not possible, but you have one more intermediate value, which is 2.5, which is also of preference 1. 2 definitely not possible. You can prove it also. You do 2, then you will definitely know that it is not going to be approaching 9, less not even 14, definitely not. Okay, it is not even going to approach the required value of 9. So if you use 2.5, then you will get around 53.2 over here. Then velocity value will be 16.7. Then here, since it is less than 20, so this has become less than 20. This is more than 20 over here. I have taken. Then your equation will be Barth's formula 15.25 by 15.25 plus V. So this is 12.25 C. According to this, your CV value will be 0.477 and this will come out to be 7.45.
Yes,
so with preference 1, 2.5 is not going to satisfy you. 2 definitely not going to satisfy. 3 is higher, but yes, it is going to satisfy. So this is your value of your choice now. I did 2.5 just to see whether it comes closer to 9. Okay. Now we know that mn cube CV adopted greater than mn cube CV, which should be required. So we can say that the normal module that is required is 3 mm. Okay. So what are the things you can write now? Since normal module is set, D1 is okay. I can write here D1 itself. It is D1. So D1 is 63.85 mm. D2 is 3 times D1 because the ratio is 3:1. So it is 191.55 mm. Okay, B value was 15 times of Mn. So that is why 15 into 3, 45 mm. Okay, and center distance also is you can calculate D1 plus D2 by 2, which is if you calculate you will get around 127.7. Okay. So these are the parameters you can see, and this is the design based on strength. Okay, this is the design that we complete based on the strength. Okay. The rest of the problem is about the dynamic load and the wear load. Okay. So what about the dynamic load? On very similar lines, we can calculate what is dynamic load. Dynamic load Fd. This time the equation will slightly change. Ft plus K3V Cb cos cube beta. Sorry. Plus Ft into cos beta by K3V plus root of Cb cos cube beta plus Ft. Okay, let me point out that
I
equation.
think it's cos square beta.
Cb cos. Yeah, sorry. I think it is cos square. Yeah. Did I miss out anything? No. Okay. Let me. Yeah, cos square beta, correct. Cb cos square beta plus Ft into cos beta. Yeah, no, it is proper. So this is 12.26 A. Okay, just find out that equation, page 214. So again, be careful when you write, otherwise what similar mistake I did, you will end up with a wrong answer. Some similarity you can find is that yes, K3 is the same value, velocity, etc. And that cos beta factor is going to come here. Rest everything is on the similar lines. That is, you have to calculate what's the dynamic factor C, the most probable error, and all that. Okay. So with that we will find out what is Fd and compare that with Fw and see whether we can it is satisfactory, or should we suggest any changes in order to limit the wearing contact. Okay, and remember, wear load is of higher importance over here because this is a not a pure case where one teeth is just pushing the other teeth, it is sliding over the other teeth. So this will have some greater importance when compared to the spur gear system. Okay, so if we calculate what is Ft here, Ft, since Mt is already calculated, Ft can easily be calculated. Ft is equal to 2Mt by D1. Okay, what is this we have seen when discussing the spur gauge? It is nothing but Ft into R, which I have rewritten in some other way. So 2 into 1.05 10 raised to 5 by D1, which is 63.85. So you get around 3290.52 newtons. Let's check it out. 3290.52 newtons. Okay. So the other procedures will continue as it is. I think we can continue this in the following class. In the meantime, you can, if you can, you just proceed and keep your answers ready. It is on very similar lines. 12.14, 12.15, 12.16, all those tables you are going to use, and find out what is FD, and consequently find out what is FW, the wear load. Okay, so all these things we'll discuss in the next class. So today's class, what we have learned, what we have understood is that the importance of the virtual number of teeth. First of all, we understood what is the importance of axial force and how that is limited, or how it is taken care by use of different bearings. That is one thing. Then how many components exist and what is their effect on the tooth, and what is the relationship between them given the helix angle and other angles, that is normal pressure angle and the transverse pressure angle. Okay, so this is what we have discussed. Most important concept of formative number of teeth. So what happens here? You are going to create a bigger imaginary circle and think that the forces that are transferred on it are pure Ft. See, the moment you transfer it from a helical way to a spur gear, okay, the moment you transfer from a helical gear to an imaginary spur gear, then Fa component will automatically be 0. Okay, I think one of the students asked this question that time. Even if it is considered, it is going to be quite less when compared to Ft. And when we already consider that a helical gear is an imaginary spur gear, on a spur gear Fa is already 0. So you need not consider anything else. Okay, you just have to, for the tooth point of view, from the virtual number of teeth point of view, equation Fa should be 0. But from the final end application point of view, then your Fa will be taken care by the bearings itself. Okay, and since the diameter, the imaginary diameter or the imaginary circle diameter is more than what is actually of the helical gear, you can definitely expect that the virtual number of teeth will be greater than the actual number of teeth, as we have seen in the first problem itself. Okay, what is the relationship? Z is equal to Z by cos cube beta. So in this problem, as you can see, Z1 is 20, but ZE1 has already attained a value greater than that, and obviously ZE2 will also be much greater than that. Otherwise, actual number of teeth is only 60. It has gone to 72.3. Yeah. So I think we can stop here. You have one more class also to attend. So next class will be on Tuesday, 8 to 9:30.
Sir,
Okay.
when will the quiz? Like what day is it the quiz on?
It will be next week. Day, I think I can tell you when the session starts itself. It will be either one of the 2 days, Tuesday or Friday. But whatever it is, anyway, the notes has been already communicated to you, and the portion will be of in the springs itself, as of now. So you need not worry about gears as of now. You can concentrate on springs for that quiz. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, students. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, sir.